Excuse me. Snow and rain, sleet in northern British Columbia. Peace country. Man, it's going to be soupy and muddy than hell up there, so today I'm going to get caught up on getting a lot of this done. And my friends are busy today. I'm going to make a pretty cool video with one of his young sons who's become an avid trapper, hunter, conservationist. And it'd be really cool to have that kid in front of the camera and show us what's what when it comes to all this life out here. It's pretty cool. Very cool people, good friends, very well-traveled, educated people. And my friend Christoph, I think we'll make a video with him too, and explain exactly how things work out here when it comes to raising cattle and bison and conservation and nature, the whole ball of wax. They cover it all here. It's really interesting. I can't put into words like he can. We'll do that later on. But anyway, so in the meantime, I got some voices to be heard. Excuse me. I've skimmed through some of these emails. Some are very lengthy, but very important. There's some very knowledgeable people out there that just we don't know about. But we're going to. But anyway, I'm not sure what this one's about. But its title, I thought it was a sick bear. Looks like it might be lengthy, but I think it's going to be interesting. See if I can get this done without freezing. Steve, you can use my first name as Dave, but please don't share any other personal info. Thanks for all you're doing on your How to Hunt site. I can see it's helping many get their experiences heard without the ridicule and disbelief in what they've experienced being thrown back at them from those they try to share with. Excuse me. I also know firsthand the lengths the government will go through to try to silence people, to try to expose government hidden agendas. If this email gets through to you, it's only because I haven't tried using this one before. My other emails being compromised after I exposed some Obama administration underhanded backdoor policymaking, taking the rights away from U.S. citizens. That's another story. I'll only say that they threatened me and my family with death if I continued to expose their plans. I was, however, successful in at least partially thwarting their attempt at changing constitutional rights through BLM budget documents. They'd already had some success using the U.S. Department of Interior Forest Service budgets, slime balls, and now they're back in office. Anyway, I'm now 7 years old. Excuse me, I've been a ranch hand, artist, copper mill worker, logger, construction worker, city county planner, miner, licensed architect, and several things in between. I recently retired to spend more time doing the things I enjoy before it's too late. This will be a long narrative, so I'll just try to keep the facts about the encounters and not go into a lot of my feelings or background. But believe me, almost every encounter I've had with the Savvy has been frightening and unnerving to say the least. I'd always thought if they really existed, it was only along the Pacific Northwest. Boy, was I wrong. The year of this pivotal incident was around 2008. It is the first that I eventually realized for what it was. My wife and I had bought property in Montana, high and close to the Continental Divide, between 6,500 and 6,800 feet above sea level. We had accumulated over several years about 80 acres, surrounded by national forest land. It is mostly steep terrain, about a mile in length, and I decided to cut a hunting trail by hand across it. I was determined to make hunting elk a little easier and quieter through all the thick timber, alders, and downfall, which I had found in the process was an old collapsed mine with gold bearing ore still stocked in the ground alongside. I quit building my trail and started digging a shaft down into the end of the collapsed mine at it. I worked at it several weekends in a row, and when I had gotten down 4 or 5 feet, I had a terrifying incident. Sorry, there's a bunch of geese squawking over there, catching my attention. I'd had a terrifying incident. I always had my Labrador, a best friend, with me when I was in the mountains, and this time was no different, except when I climbed out of the shaft to dump the waste dirt and rock, my dog alerted me to something above us. She stopped against my leg and held me there while she focused her eyes and face up the mountain off to our right. That was the first time I'd heard what I'd hear many more times that summer. What I heard and felt was sort of like a throb from a helicopter just coming into range. You know, you can sort of feel the rumble before you actually hear it. It turned from a deep vibration into a deep, rumbly growl. The source worked its way across the mountain from right to left until it was around 50 yards, nearly straight above us. There was an odor along with it. It smelled like crap, really. About every 20 or 30 feet, even though I couldn't see what was the cause, an alder or a sapling pine would shake violently. And there was no wind. There wasn't any. It was hot and dry. The only means of defense I had were my dog and my chainsaw. When it started down the mountainside toward us, I grabbed my chainsaw and kept my shovel near at hand. I figured it must be a bear. The growl was too deep to be anything else. My faithful dog stayed glued to my leg, hair standing on end and watching intently, but not making a sound. The mature timber is thick up there. Lots of underbrush, huckleberry bushes, young sapling pines, alders, and other brush. I could not see what was making the growl, and I thought maybe the bushes were shaking because it was nervous and afraid of us. When the growls were about 70 feet above us, I was afraid it would attack. I felt like I would soon be fighting a bear. I'm not fearless, I just don't believe in going down without a fight. I didn't see where I was being given a choice. It appeared to have followed the trail I'd cut through the timber to get to where I was. I fired up my chainsaw, waved it around overhead, and moved towards it. To my relief, the growling and tree shaking began moving back up the mountainside, eventually heading on across side hilling its way to my left. I went back to pick up my shovel work I went back to my pick and shovel work, And about a half hour later, we went to dump my wheelbarrow over the side. Once again, my dog stopped me and directed my attention downhill to our right. Just as before. At first I felt it rather than heard it. When I did hear it, again it sounded like a far-off helicopter until the deep growls were more clear. I picked up my gear, headed back up the mountain and across my trail, cut to my Jeep. When I got back home, I told the family about the strange incident. I didn't realize at the time how many more times it would happen that summer. It repeated almost every time I went up there. After each occurrence, when I got home, I told the family about it. I figured it was a bear trying to frighten me off, but maybe more afraid of me than I was of it. I packed a shotgun along a few times after that, but it always seemed to hang back, and honestly, I sort of got used to it. If I was up there, sooner or later it would be there too. But it never attacked and stayed hidden in the underbrush. By fall that year, I was busy staking claims in the surrounding national forest. On one of these claims postings, I was on my own property when I had maybe the worst life-changing event of my life. My faithful lab and I had ridden my ATV four-wheeler up an old mine road to an area I had GPSed as the center for posting my claim. The center was somewhere off the road below us in a jumble of deadfall and standing beetle-killed timber. It was a sort of a tough hike down into it. The deadfall stacked to a height of 5 feet in places, and a real workout getting to my GPS point. I'd just gotten the claim posting notice out of my backpack and was ready to tack it up to the closest tree when my pup, hair standing on end, alerted me to something above us. As in every other instance, the growls were moving from our right to our left. This time, angling down the mountain on an old, overgrown mine trail. Soon, as in every other encounter, I could smell the pungent odor. The trail was covered thick in saplings and large older bushes. I couldn't see anything but the violent shaking of a sapling or an alder as it worked its way down the road near my ATV above us. It's hard to describe the feeling when I realized I was unarmed and had no way to get out of the thick downfall I was in without going back up to the old road where this thing was headed. I quickly tacked the notice up with a small steel-handled hatchet I'd brought along for the purpose, and to blaze the trees around for marking the claim position posting location. By this time, it was maybe 50 or 60 feet from me, still growling loudly, snapping its teeth, and shaking saplings a few feet from the edge of the road. Other than the hatchet, I was unarmed. I honestly thought it was going to kill me. But I felt I had to at least get to the road to have any chance of escape. The road at this point was 30 or 40 feet above me. The creature slightly further up the road and still on the uphill side. I couldn't see it. My dog acted like she'd go up onto the road ahead of me, but I called her back and told her to stay with me. I worked my way back through the deadfall I was in and up to the road. It was the only direction I could go without getting even more hung up in the downfall. When I got to the road, my intentions were to quickly back my way down the road to my truck and utility trailer, parked a few hundred yards further down. Hill. Sorry. I figured I'd at least have a fighting chance in the open, but the smell of the animal, the deep growls, the closeness of the shaking trees got my attention, and I realized I probably wouldn't be able to get away from it. It was then that I realized my ATV was parked about 15 feet up the road from me, and no more than another 15 feet past it to the shaking trees and deep growls. 15? I decided I was going to die anyway, and I decided to put up a fight, if needed, and try to get to my four-wheeler. All I had was my little hatchet, which I had up to this point kept raised above my head, figuring I'd only get one chance to disable this thing when it charged me. But it didn't charge. It just kept snarling, growling, and gnashing its teeth. When I was about 10 feet from my ATV, I got hit with the worst stink I've ever encountered. In my past, I used to help doctor livestock on the ranch, and it smelled a lot like rancid flesh and pus. Hot, steamy pus. Ugh, gross. I could feel the moist odor. It was like being in a sauna, only with the odor of putrid flesh. The last few feet of to the ATV, I was doing everything I could to hold my breath, keep moving, keep from throwing up, and keep from passing out from not breathing. I figured if I dropped my knees throwing up, it would be all over. Dry heaving while holding my breath, all my hair standing on end. I made it to my rig, and still, with my hatchet raised overhead, I started it up with my left hand ready to hatchet strike with my right, and started to take off down the road. I remember my dog and started to holler at her to load up when I realized she was already on the seat behind me, watching the shaking tree. Her hair also standing on end as we bolted down the road. I won't bother you with the rest, but yes, we got away, and it didn't pursue us any further that I know of. What a shitty experience, man. The animal had worked its way off federal ground. Excuse me. I decided it had to be a sick bear to smell that bad, so I contacted the Fish and Wildlife and Parks Department in hopes they'd come up and put it out of its misery. I know, my mistake, but maybe a part of the puzzle we were all trying to solve. So, it turned out my call was forwarded to the state bear biologist in Missoula, Montana. I told him of the bear encounter, experiences that had happened all summer, including this one, and he told me this, maybe not word for word, but close to it. It isn't a bear. And no, we don't interfere with them unless they hurt somebody. I said that this thing had to be suffering and was going to kill somebody. It had to be a bear. What else can it be? I asked. Again, he told me it isn't a bear. They don't smell like that, and they don't shake trees. He said he'd been a bear biologist for over 25 years, and they don't act like that. It's not a bear, he repeated. He then went on to say that if it ever stepped out of the bush, to be prepared to defend myself. He said to get a gun, a big gun, like a 12-gauge automatic shotgun or a Marlin guide rifle 45-70 or bigger. He said they use the guide rifles in Alaska with good success. So, I said, what you're telling me is to go ahead and kill it if it steps out of the brush? So if it's a grizzly bear, then it's okay to kill it? He said, no, I didn't say that. It's not a bear. But be prepared to defend yourself. At the time, I still thought he was saying it was okay to shoot a protected grizzly in that situation. It would take several more bear encounters before I figured out what it really was and what he'd been trying to tell me. I wish he could have just been more open about it. I didn't have a clue that anything like a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Sabe, or whatever you want to call them, even existed in Montana. But it's obvious to me now that he did know. He just couldn't say anything. What a joke, eh? Can't say anything. Fuck. What I did learn from that encounter was this. These creatures don't want to get hurt. When I went towards it trying to reach my ATV, I think it thought I was coming after it. I had my arm up with my hatchet raised and ready to strike. When I came so close to it, I honestly think it had one of those oh shit moments. And I think that's when it realized that sickening odor. It's different from their normal pungent crap smell, and I think it may be released under stress. I believe at that moment it was as frightened as I was. Since then, I've had many more encounters, rocks thrown at me, earth-shaking roars, deep growls that sound like distant thunder coming, and rock smacking like clacks. I think they make the clacks with their tongue and mouth because there's a slightly hollow sound to it, but sharp and loud. I've had great success turning them away by raising my pistol high above my head and waving it back and forth. I've even fired several shots, but always directed away from it. I just don't want it to know I recognize it's there, but don't want to hurt it. I believe they are afraid of guns and know what they are. Definitely. They don't want to get hurt. They just want you to get scared enough to leave. It's my ground, maybe theirs too, but I'm not going to get run off my own place. Since that life-threatening incident up there, my family and I are always armed when we go up. They're up there every time I go up. Sometimes more aggressive, sometimes weird things happen that leave me wondering. Like the time I was walking back to my camp early one evening, the sun was down and the timber was getting dark, but I could see well enough to walk the road back. As I came up a bend in the road, I noticed a glowing blue/white sphere waving slowly back and forth and up and down in the timber above the road. It was spooky to say the least, but I had to figure out what it was. It was really odd. A bluish-white glowing orb about 16 inches in diameter floating in the dark forest. I pulled my gun and climbed the road bank to work my way up to it. I'd heard of glowing orbs, but didn't want to leave without figuring out for sure what it was. As I moved up the hill towards it, it stopped moving. I took my time. I didn't have a clue what it could be, or if I was in danger. When I got 5 or 10 feet from it, I realized it was a glow-in-the-dark party balloon attached to a long ribbon. The ribbon looked like it had been jumbled up and shoved back into, under, and then back up and around a couple limbs of brush. No knots, but there's no way it could have tangled itself in the limbs that way. It looked like something had just jumbled a bunch of the ribbon in a couple different places and shoved them back up into the brush to hold the balloon there, like a toddler might do. I pulled the balloon loose and took it back to camp with me. I don't know what it was doing high in the mountains, surrounded with nothing but forest for miles. It just floated there, or it was intended as what some people call a gift or not. I don't know. But I'm not suggesting that the orbs other folks have seen are balloons. I'm just telling you what the one I thought I was seeing turned out to be. A couple years ago, my daughter and I were clearing down timber off the road across our property. There was a lot of beetle-killed timber, and after every winter, I have to take a day or two to clear the road. We would stop my truck, get out at each roadblock, and I'd cut the deadfall into manageable pieces, and we'd both throw them off the road. If I was close to another downfall, I'd walk ahead, and she'd drive the truck close to where we were working. We were close to the end of the road when I started cutting another log that angled off the upper bank of the road. As I reached out to cut it close to the bank, I saw a quick movement on a big red root ball about 30 yards up the hill. I thought it was maybe a squirrel or a fox or something, so I took a second look. I saw what at first I thought was a large, dirty, old, rust-colored root ball covered in leaves and twigs and matted roots. There was one area on the upper left side that looked like maybe very fine roots blowing lightly in the breeze. The sun was shining on that portion of the roots, and I realized it looked more like hair, maybe 4 or 5 inches long, standing on end. It was a left side shoulder, a huge shoulder. I knew better than to stare at the predator and wasn't sure at the time if I was looking at a grizzly bear or what, so I slowly began cutting the log while studying the root ball closer, with my head angled slightly like I was looking at my chainsawing and not at the animal. I realized that there was another shoulder, what I thought was the end of the root ball, close to 5 feet over to the right. And there was a hump between the shoulders, like maybe something had its head tucked facing away from me. It had long, matted, reddish-brown hair down its back and sides. It had lots of leaves and twigs stuck in the hair. It had a part in the hair down the middle of its back that dropped right into the crack of its butt. No tail. Not even a short bear-type tail. It had a big bottom. I could see its left thigh, and it was massive. I could see the legs dropping into the brush, but I couldn't see its lower legs or feet, and I think it was probably on its knees. Looking down from the left shoulder, it had a huge bicep, bigger than my thigh, and was resting its forearms across the lodgepole log that was maybe 8 or 10 inches in diameter. Assuming it had wrists and hands, they were tucked in front of its body. I looked closer at its sides, and I could see it slowly breathing and exhaling out. I quietly but forcefully told my daughter to get to the truck already parked nearby and bring it up closer. I didn't point the beast out to her because I didn't want her to stare and have it realize that we saw it without some sort of protection nearby. She brought the truck up and I finished cleaning the road off and her drive ahead while I walked on up to the next downfall. We only had a couple of downfalls left, and soon we turned around at our mine landing and headed back up the road towards our camp. When we got to the spot where I'd cut that piece of timber, the root ball was gone. The lodgepole log that had been hunched over was there. The end of it was small. Yellow root ball was... The end of it, with a small yellow root ball, was tucked back in the alders about 20 feet the other side of where I'd seen this beast. It wasn't until later that it dawned on me that the lodgepole pine root balls are smaller and yellowish in color. I've seen large rust-colored root balls before, but they're attached to big fir trees, not lodgepoles. It also explained a similar fir tree root ball I had spotted from the road once before, but when I went back, it wasn't there. I wonder just how many times it had used that trick and gotten away with it. My daughter and I have talked about the incident many times since, and she remembers clearly when I asked her to get the pickup truck at that place. She said I had a strange look on my face and appeared distracted. She couldn't figure out why it took me so long to cut up that log. We also realized that we had been clearing the road for nearly a mile, and no wild animal in its right mind would have stuck around in that open so close to us while we worked. That thing was massive. 4 to 5 feet across his shoulders. I realized then that I wouldn't want to shoot one, and they could probably survive most caliber of gunshots. If I ever have to shoot one, I'd aim for its head. Other than that, I think with one this size, there'd be a good chance of just pissing it off. I think its staying in plain sight was intentional. It kept its head tucked down and didn't turn around or move. I've since wondered if there was another one nearby, keeping an eye on what I was doing, and ready to warn the one I was watching if I were to look like I was threatening it. I think it wanted me to see it, and maybe see what my reaction would be. I'll attach a sketch I drew of it a few days after this encounter. I couldn't get it out of my mind, and I still can't. One note about my sketch: I took a photo of the sketch and have since lost the actual sketch. I noticed in the photo that the animal's butt seems a little wider than it actually was, and it's because the left thigh was so massive. When I drew it, some of the subtle shading didn't show up at the better defined... Sorry, the dog just walked up. Not a dog, it's like a bear. I'll show you in a sec. Sorry. I noticed in the photo that the animal's butt seems a little wider than it actually was, and it's because the left thigh was so massive, and when I drew it, some of the subtle shading didn't show up at the better defined what is hip and what is butt in the photo. Either way, it is close to what I saw. Okay, here's the picture. I'm going to try the old up to the camera trick. Look out, puppy. Now, is that working? Looks a little dark. Alright, you know what? I'm going to have to do this on the edit program once I get back. Too dark. Alright. That'd be something else to see that, though, man. Holy shit, this is a good sketch. We have had many more encounters with them, including around Thanksgiving this year when I had a rock thrown at me once while loading logs into my pickup and had something whoop like it was surprised by a loud bang I made dropping a log in my truck on another trip up there. We have many other encounters over the years. I've seen a fresh killed elk, and when I returned a half hour later, saw it now had a rear quarter ripped off and laid out horizontally on a deadfall. That would be freaky as... That'd just be really freaky, man. Imagine the power it would take to rip a hind quarter off an elk. Ooh. So, just think what it could do to you. Crazy. Ripped off and laid out horizontally on a deadfall, my family has been followed back to our camp by deep growling, and I've had to run them off by waving a gun in the air. I lost a nice bull elk I'd shot to a couple of individuals that prevented me from getting to it. What? They warned me off with deep, menacing growls every time I tried to step closer in their direction. I couldn't see them. They were close. One near the edge of the timber I was in. The other was in a thick patch of alder brush. I could hear the elk antlers being pulled through the brush as the second one growled and snarled at me from a closer location slightly uphill from the elk. Antler noises. My hair was standing on end. I tried several times to approach, but each time was severely warned. And I finally decided they wanted the elk more than I did. I guess they could have been a pair of big grizzlies, but I don't really think so. It was like I was being team tagged. One of them kept me back while the other dragged my bull away. Holy shit. Yeah, no, a bear would have just charged your ass and done you in. They don't do that. They are masters of their environment, and they can sneak up close when they want to. I would have to write a book to cover all the experiences in detail, and I'm not going to write one in an email. I don't like it, but I have no doubt we haven't seen the last of them. As to what they are, I don't think they're an offshoot of us humans. I do wonder if we humans are an offshoot of them. I think they are the original people of the world that Adam and Eve's children were told to go out and populate the world with. Paraphrased, of course. I think we are a cross between them and an alien race. Adam and Eve's children. I think the Bible supports this. I also think that's why we don't have some of the abilities they have, but have other abilities they don't. And yes, I do believe in God. As for their possible ability to travel between dimensions, I haven't seen anything like that yet, but I do keep an open mind, and I do believe they have infrasound capabilities that might also be part of the reported mind speak others have reported. I haven't had them putting any words in my head, but they certainly don't have any trouble letting you know they're just pleased with you and want you to leave. I don't know if they are more intelligent than us, but I do believe they are much more in tune with their environment than we are. I don't want to be overrun with researchers or foolish people hiking around my property wanting to see one. I also don't want anyone going up there and ticking them off. I have enough to deal with as these things stand without them getting more pissed than they already are. So please don't share my name or contact info. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to contact me. I have many theories, including recent related government activities. Lots of facts, but no solid answers. Thanks. All right, man. I got your number. I got your email. That is one hell of a frickin' email. I think that's a wise choice not sharing your information. Because there is a certain group out there that's been known to trespass and do whatever they can to get on that property, right? And they would do that for sure, and who knows who else. Man. Good for you staying there. Good for you still going back in the woods. The majority of people would stop going in the woods for a lot less than you've experienced. That's for sure. It's funny. I was really spooked out last evening, but sort of in a way, I haven't been spooked for quite a while. Like seriously spooked. But that quad I have, it's not even a year old. It's brand new. And you know when you buy something brand new like that, you think you're indestructible, right? So for me, 100% confidence. By myself, going out in the middle of nowhere up in the mountains. And I basically got to my furthest point from the pickup, which I don't know how long it would have took me to hike out. Because I know when I took my trapping course, every 20 minutes on a sled on the trail equates to 8 hours walking for a human in the snow. So an hour with the quad through hell, the old cut lines and swampy dog shit. I don't know. It would have took a long time, man. I only had an hour and a half of seeing light left. And I got to my furthest point, and the thing starts overheating. Like, you got to be kidding me. And it's so weird. It's kind of I don't get that feeling often, but you just get a sinking feeling in the pit of your gut, like, oh shit. Oh shit. And I had those cooler bags, those soft bags, but it's a cooler bag, lined and kind of cushiony. Well, I had all my trail cameras in one of those, and I emptied everything out of it, and I took the bag and I had to hike for too long to finally find a marshy puddle of grass, and I had to flatten the bag out in the puddle and squeeze it down and get some water in it, and I hike all the way back and pour it in the radiator. I think I did that 3 times, so I finally realized the water was pouring right through it. Crawled underneath, and the hose with those clamps. So the hose is like this, and the clamp, it's one of those pinching clamps. Use pliers to open it up, just put it onto its fitting there, and then let it go. Well, it pulled right off. I don't know how it pulled off. I don't think it was on properly to begin with. So I had to get that back on. I still had 2 salt blocks left, so I put them on the ground, and I backed the quad up on top of them to get it off the ground higher. Cut a piece of wood with a chainsaw, put the wood in there for safety so it wouldn't fall off and crush my head. That'd be a shitty, weird way to go. And then it took me for frickin' ever, but I managed to get it fixed. But it took away from me my confidence of going forever on that thing by myself up in this country. You know, it's just, I'm a little hesitant, right? I mean, once bitten. And that sinking feeling isn't common for me, and I don't like it. But anyways, a little bit of babble about me there. It's interesting. I'd almost be tempted to come down and visit you and go for a walk on your property. To experience what you're experiencing. I haven't heard the growls, but then again, why would I don't know. I don't really need that, you know? I mean, I put myself out there almost weekly, easily, daily, especially where I was yesterday. And I never try to invite anything like that, what's been happening with you. And I just don't need it. And I am in elk country, and I am in the middle of where a whole pile of experiences are go down around here. It's pretty crazy. Maybe one day, once I get back and get the man cave set up, maybe we can have a conversation with the people that listen to, possibly. It would be very interesting to hear your knowledge that you've gained through direct experience, right? But anyway, I'm cold. This is a shitty day. But it's a good day to get caught up on and getting voices heard. So, I'm going to go in, warm up, maybe put on some warmer clothes, and then do some more of this.